You know what nobody tells you about being an introvert? That the world is designed to punish you for existing. Every single day, you're told to speak up, to network, to be more social. But what if everything you've been told about introversion is backwards? Picture this: a conference room, 20 people. The extrovert dominates the conversation for 15 minutes. Everyone nods. The meeting ends. Nothing gets done. Now, same room, same problem, but an introvert speaks once. 7 words. The entire energy shifts. Real solutions emerge. This isn't a feel-good story. This is neuroscience. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand why your brain isn't broken. It's just operating on a completely different frequency that most people can't even detect. Let's start with what your psychology teacher never told you. Introversion isn't shyness. It's not social anxiety. It's not a preference. It's how your nervous system processes dopamine. Extroverts have a shorter dopamine pathway. They need constant external stimulation to feel alive. Parties, noise, action. Their brains are literally starving for input. Your brain? Completely different architecture. You have a longer, more complex dopamine pathway that runs through areas responsible for planning, memory, and problem solving. Here's what this means in real terms. When an extrovert walks into a party, their brain screams, "Yes, finally." Stimulation. When you walk in, your brain goes, processing, processing, threat assessment, energy calculation, social mapping. You're running a supercomputer while they're running a sports car. Neither is better, but here's the manipulation. Society convinced you that the sports car is superior because it's louder and faster. Nobody mentions that supercomputers solve problems sports cars can't even comprehend. And this biological difference creates a pattern in your life that you've probably never named. A pattern that makes you feel crazy because every time you try to explain it, people look at you like you're making excuses. But you're not, and I'm about to prove it. Here's the controversial truth. You're not antisocial. You're energy aware. And this awareness is actually a survival mechanism that most people have completely lost. Think about your last social gathering. 3 hours in, you hit a wall. Not tired, not bored, something else entirely. Your body physically starts shutting down. Extroverts call this being a party pooper. Neuroscience calls this overstimulation threshold. Your nervous system has a finite amount of energy for processing external stimuli. Small talk, reading body language, managing facial expressions, responding to social cues. All of this burns energy. For extroverts, these activities generate energy. For you, they consume it. Not because you're weak, because your brain is processing at a fundamentally deeper level. Let me give you a concrete example. At a party, an extrovert hears a joke and laughs. One neural pathway. Done. You hear the same joke. Your brain activates 7 different processing centers. Literal meaning, contextual analysis, speaker's intention, appropriate response timing, emotional authenticity check, memory comparison, and social expectation management. 7 pathways versus 1. You're not overthinking, you're just thinking. And society tells you that's a problem. But here's where it gets really interesting. Because this same mechanism that drains you in social situations, it's the exact same mechanism that gives you an almost unfair advantage in other areas. Areas that nobody talks about because it threatens the extrovert-dominated narrative. You know those moments where you disappear into your head for hours? Working on a problem, reading, creating something. That's not escaping. That's accessing a mental state that most people can't reach. Psychologists call it flow state. But for introverts, it's different, deeper. You don't just enter flow, you live there. And here's the hidden pattern. While extroverts are networking and schmoozing and building connections, you're in your room solving problems that will matter in 10 years. Real example, Steve Wozniak designed the Apple computer alone in his room, not at a networking event, not in a brainstorming session, alone, processing, thinking, building. His introversion wasn't a limitation, it was the exact trait required for that level of focused innovation. But society doesn't celebrate this because there's no visible hustle, no performance, just results. And this reveals something darker about how culture manipulates introverts. You've been conditioned to believe that visibility equals value, that if you're not constantly promoting yourself, you're falling behind. But the truth is more complex. Here's another superpower you probably take for granted. You see everything. In a room of 20 people, extroverts are performing. You're scanning, reading micro expressions, noticing who's uncomfortable, who's lying, who has real power versus who's pretending. This isn't paranoia, it's evolved pattern recognition. Your brain developed this capability because when you can't rely on social dominance, you need information. And information is the ultimate power. I'll prove this to you. Think about the last group project you did. The extroverts talked for 40 minutes, made plans, got excited. Then what happened? They looked at you because somewhere in your silence, you caught the 3 fatal flaws in their plan, and you said it in one sentence. That's not luck. That's cognitive architecture. But knowing this doesn't make the world easier to navigate. Because here's the painful reality. The system isn't designed for how your brain works, and this creates a daily psychological battle that most introverts never talk about. The mask. Let me describe your Monday morning. You wake up already tired because you know what's coming. 8 hours of performing. Not working, performing. Performing enthusiasm in meetings. Performing interest in small talk. Performing energy you don't have. By Wednesday, you're running on fumes. By Friday, you cancel all weekend plans because you need 48 hours just to feel human again. And then Monday arrives and you do it all over. This is called social code switching. And it's destroying your mental health because every time you perform extroversion, you're creating a gap between your authentic self and your presented self. And that gap, that's where anxiety lives. Here's the manipulation nobody mentions. Society convinced you that success requires constant performance, but research shows the opposite. The most successful introverts succeed because they stopped performing and started leveraging their natural operating system. Think about this pattern. How many times have you prepared for a meeting, analyzed every angle, had the perfect solution, and then watched an extrovert get credit because they said it louder? That's not your failure. That's a rigged game. But here's where it gets psychologically complex. Because the solution isn't just be yourself. That's empty advice. The real question is, how do you be yourself in a world that punishes authenticity? And this is where most introversion content fails. They tell you to embrace your introversion, but they don't give you the tactical tools to survive in extrovert-dominated spaces. They don't tell you about the dark psychology at play, because there's a reason the world pressures you to be more social. And it's not about helping you succeed. It's about control. And once you understand this mechanism, you'll never see social expectations the same way again. Here's the contrarian truth that makes people uncomfortable. Loud extroverted culture benefits corporations and institutions because visible, social, performative people are easier to manage. Think about it. If everyone's at happy hour networking, nobody's at home thinking deeply about whether their job actually makes sense. If everyone's posting on social media, nobody's questioning why they need external validation. The system runs smoother when people are externally focused. Your introversion? Performing interest in small talk. It's a threat because when you go home and think for 4 hours, you start seeing patterns. You start asking questions. Why am I doing this? Does this align with my values? Is this what I actually want? This is why corporate culture glorifies team players and go-getters. not because these traits lead to better outcomes. Studies show diverse cognitive styles produce better results, but because conformity is easier to manage than individuality, and nowhere is this manipulation clearer than in networking culture. You've been told your entire life that success requires networking, that you need to work the room, collect business cards, attend every event, but here's what they don't tell you. Extroverted networking creates shallow connections that rarely lead to meaningful opportunities. Meanwhile, one deep conversation with the right person can change your entire trajectory. The research backs this up. Introverts build smaller networks with stronger ties, and strong ties are where real opportunities happen. Jobs, partnerships, collaborations. These don't come from networking events. They come from deep relationships built over time. But that's not flashy, can't be photographed, doesn't generate social proof, so it gets dismissed. And this brings us to the most important tactical question. How do you actually succeed as an introvert without burning out? Because understanding the system is one thing, beating it is another, and that's what the next section is really about. First principle: stop trying to build more energy. Start managing the energy you have. This is the fundamental shift nobody teaches you. Your energy is finite. Accept that. Now work backwards. If you have 40 units of social energy per day, how do you spend them strategically? Example: you have a presentation at 2 p.m. That's going to cost you 15 units. So you skip the morning team meeting, not because you're antisocial, because you're strategic. You save your energy for where it matters. This requires something uncomfortable: setting boundaries, real boundaries. I can't make the team lunch today without explaining yourself, because the moment you explain, you're asking for permission, and you don't need permission to manage your own nervous system. Here's your second weapon. Preparation eliminates performance anxiety. When extroverts wing it, they succeed through charisma. When you prepare deeply, you succeed through competence. Before any social or professional situation, you analyze it. Who's going to be there? What's the goal? What are 3 possible conversation topics? What's your exit strategy? This isn't overthinking. This is playing to your strengths. Your brain excels at analysis and planning. Use it. Real tactic. Before a networking event, identify 3 specific people you want to talk to. Research them for 10 minutes each. Then show up with a purpose. Have 3 conversations that matter. Leave. You just out-networked the extrovert who talked to 30 people and remembered none of them. Third tactic: leverage written communication. Your brain processes deeply. Writing gives you time to process. Email, Slack, detailed proposals, these are your arenas. While extroverts dominate meetings, you dominate documentation. And here's the power move. When you document everything well, you become indispensable, because institutional knowledge lives in documentation, not in whoever talked the most in a meeting. Fourth, you don't need to be visible all the time. You need to be visible at the right times. Pick 3 moments per week where you deliberately show up fully. This is how you build a reputation without burning out. Quality visibility beats quantity visibility every single time. Prepared, present. Make those moments count. But here's what all these tactics point to. You're not trying to become an extrovert. You're trying to build a life where your introversion becomes your competitive advantage. And that requires one final mental shift that most people never make. Stop measuring success by extroverted metrics: parties attended, connections made, social media followers. That's their game with their rules. Your metrics are different: problem solved, deep work completed, quality relationships maintained, mental clarity preserved, creative output generated. When you shift metrics, everything changes, because suddenly you're not failing at being extroverted. You're succeeding at being you. Real example: you decline a Friday night invitation. The extroverted metric says you missed networking. Your metric says you preserved energy for Saturday morning's 4-hour deep work session that produces something meaningful. Different games, different wins. Here's the psychological twist. The moment you stop trying to be more extroverted is the moment you become more effective, because you stop wasting energy on performance and start investing it in production. This sounds simple. It's not. Because it requires accepting that some people will never understand you, some will judge you, some will call you weird or cold or antisocial, and that's okay. Because you're not optimizing for universal approval. You're optimizing for authentic impact. Final reframe. Introversion is a long game strategy. Extroversion wins sprints. Introversion wins marathons. While others are burning bright and fast, you're building deep, thinking long. Creating work that compounds, building relationships that last decades. Developing expertise that can't be faked. 10 years from now, the person who networked at every event will have shallow connections and surface-level knowledge. You'll have mastery, deep relationships, and work that matters. That's not coping. That's strategy. So let's bring this together. Your brain isn't broken. It's just wired for depth instead of breadth, for quality instead of quantity, for thinking instead of performing. The world will keep trying to change you. Let it try, because every hour you spend trying to be more extroverted is an hour you don't spend leveraging your actual superpowers, your powers of deep processing, pattern recognition, focused execution, and strategic thinking. Stop performing. Start producing. Stop networking. Start building. Stop trying to be seen. Start creating work that can't be ignored. Your introversion isn't something to overcome. It's something to weaponize. And the moment you understand this, truly understand this, you become dangerous in the best way possible. Because while everyone else is shouting, you're thinking. And thinking, done deeply enough, changes everything. Here's your challenge. This week, identify one area where you've been performing extroversion. Maybe it's attending every meeting. Maybe it's forcing small talk. Maybe it's staying at social events longer than your energy allows. Drop it. Just for 1 week. Replace it with something that leverages your natural cognitive style. Deep work, thoughtful writing, strategic planning, and watch what happens. Because the world doesn't need more performers. It needs more thinkers, more observers, more people who go deep instead of broad. You're an introvert. Stop apologizing for it. Start leveraging it. Your brain is a supercomputer in a world of sports cars. Act like it. If this resonated with you, leave a comment with one thing you're going to stop performing this week. Let's build a community of introverts who refuse to play extroverted games anymore. Now get out there. Or rather, stay in there and do something that matters.